Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are going to do something a little bit dangerous.
Oh,
We are going to take a long, hard look in the mirror. And I don't mean we're going to, give ourselves a pep talk or check for spinach in our teeth.
okay.
We are going to look at the human animal. We're stripping away all the poetry, the romance novels, the rom-coms, all the societal expectations,
hmm
and we're going to look at the raw, unfiltered biology of human attraction.
It is a fascinating, and I have to say a slightly disturbing topic when you really get into the weeds of it.
Right.
We like to think of our love lives as these, unique spiritual journeys, or at least choices that we're making with full autonomy.
Of course, free will.
But the source material we're covering today, and it's this incredible synthesis of evolutionary biology, anthropology, and psychology, it suggests there is a massive amount of biological baggage driving the bus.
Biological baggage is putting it so lightly. This text has a central premise that
Yeah.
is, honestly, it's one of the most provocative things I've read in a long, long time.
It really is.
It basically poses a challenge. It asks, can you determine a species' entire sex life? I mean, how faithful they are, how much they cheat, how they organize their families, who raises the kids, just by taking a tape measure to the males and females.
That's the core question. It's this idea of form follows function. But in this case, the function isn't, running or eating. It's mating strategy.
And the author has a very memorable name for this.
They do. They rather brazenly call it the slut scale.
I saw that in the notes and I just laughed out loud. It's definitely an attention grabber. I'm assuming the scientific community uses slightly different terminology in their peer-reviewed journals.
They do, thankfully, yes. If we strip away the shock value of the slut scale, what we're really talking about is the scientific spectrum of polygyny versus monogamy.
Okay, so a spectrum.
Imagine a line. On one end, you have one mate for life till death do us part, never look at another soul. Total monogamy. On the other end, you have as many mates as possible every single season, zero attachment. And every species, including us, falls somewhere on that line.
So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out exactly where Homo sapiens, where we fall on that scale.
That's the mission.
And I think if you stopped a random person on the street and asked them, are humans naturally monogamous? They'd probably say, well, yeah.
Of course.
We get married, we buy houses together, we have anniversaries, we have laws against bigamy.
Right, all the cultural stuff. But this text suggests it is infinitely more complicated than that.
It's messy.
It is incredibly messy. We are going to be decoding our biology, our history, to answer that question. Are we naturally monogamous, or is there something else written in our genes?
And to be clear, the sources here aren't just looking at humans in a vacuum.
No, not at all. They use a comparative approach. They look at the entire animal kingdom to find the rules, and then they see if humans follow them or break them.
I have to say, looking at the data, the stuff on size, puberty, even our brain architecture,
Yeah.
I was genuinely surprised by how much of our modern behavior seems well pre-programmed.
It can be jarring. It really can. We love the idea of free will, but when you look at the raw data, like the statistical size difference between men and women or the specific timing of puberty, it paints a picture of an evolutionary history that was much rougher and much more competitive than we usually like to admit.
So let's unpack this. Let's get into it. The author starts with this idea of size as a predictor of fidelity. But before we get to the measurements, we probably need to define our terms.
Good idea.
Because the text throws around polygyny, polyandry, and polygamy, and I think people, myself included, often use those interchangeably. But in biology, they mean very different things.
Right. Precision is key here. So in biology, polygyny, spelled with a GYN at the end, specifically refers to a system where one male mates with multiple females.
One male, many females.
That's the harem structure. Think of a lion pride or a gorilla troop with a silverback. That's polygyny.
Okay, so polygyny is many females.
Yeah.
Got it.
Correct. Then you have polyandry with an AND, which is the complete reverse.
So one female with multiple males.
Exactly. It's much, much rarer in mammals, but it does happen in some species.
And then polygamy is just the catch-all.
Polygamy is the umbrella term. It just means having multiple partners of any kind. It's not a specific.
Okay, so when we talk about that slut scale, we are mostly looking at the degree of polygyny, that one male, many females dynamic.
We are, because that's the most common deviation from monogamy in the mammalian world. And this leads us to what the source presents as the golden rule of mammals.
The golden rule.
The text states this correlation with just absolute confidence. The bigger the males are than the females, the more polygynous they are.
It's really that simple. You You weigh them and you know their dating life.
Essentially, yes. The greater the size disparity, what scientists call sexual dimorphism in size, the less monogamous the species is. It's a physical record of the mating system.
Okay, let's look at the evidence then. The text uses the whole animal kingdom to prove this rule.
Right.
Let's start at the faithful end of the spectrum.
Right.
Who is the gold standard for monogamy?
That would be the gibbon.
The gibbon. Yeah.
Gibbons are these lesser apes. They live in Southeast Asia, and they are strictly monogamous. They pair off, they sing these amazing duets together to mark their territory, and they raise their offspring together. It's a true partnership.
So a 1-to-1 mating ratio, what do they look like physically?
And that's the tell. If you look at them, the males and females are roughly the same size. In fact, without looking at the genitals, it's often hard to tell them apart just at a glance.
So a 1-to-1 size ratio correlates perfectly to a 1-to-1 mating ratio.
Generally, yes. Evolution hasn't pushed one sex to be larger than the other because there's no physical arms race to acquire mates.
Right. If every male is pretty much guaranteed a female, there's no need to be a giant to, crush the competition.
Why waste the calories? There's no evolutionary advantage to being a bully if there's no one to bully.
Okay, so that's one data point. Now let's contrast that with a gorilla, because the gorilla is a very different vibe.
A totally different vibe. In gorilla society, everything revolves around the silverback, the alpha male.
He runs the show.
He runs the entire show. He controls a harem, usually of up to about 6 females. He effectively owns the breeding rights for that whole group. Any other males are on the periphery, just looking in, hoping for a chance that will probably never come.
A harem of 6, so 1 male, 6 females. And physically, what's the size difference?
Physically, the male gorilla is roughly double the weight of the female.
Double.
He's a massive tank of muscle and bone compared to his mates. He has that giant sagittal crest on his head to anchor his jaw muscles. He has the silverback.
Yeah.
He is built for one thing: dominance.
Wow. So we've gone from a 1-to-1 size ratio with monogamy to a 2-to-1 size ratio with a 1-to-6 mating ratio.
Exactly. You can see the graph taking shape. The size gap is widening as the harem size grows.
But the source gives us an even more extreme example to really hammer this point home.
Oh, it does. The southern elephant seal.
I spent a lot of time reading this section of the notes. The
Yeah.
numbers here are just, they don't feel real. It sounds like something from a fantasy novel.
They are staggering. A successful alpha male southern elephant seal, the beachmaster they call him, averages a harem of 50
It's
females.
50. F50.
50. Imagine the logistics of that. He has to defend them, mate with them, fight off challengers. It's a full-time job.
And the size difference here has to be insane.
It is. The females are described in the text as diminutive, weighing in at about 700 to 800 pounds.
Hold on. 700 pounds is diminutive. That's the size of a grand piano. That's a large motorcycle.
It's only diminutive in comparison.
In comparison to what?
The male. The beachmaster weighs typically 9 times as much as the female.
9 times.
We are talking about a creature that can weigh up to 8,000 pounds, 4 tons. He's not just a large animal, he's an absolute monster. He's the size of a large truck.
8,000 pounds. So that's a 9-to-1 size ratio for a 50-to-1 harem.
It is the golden rule in its most extreme, brutal form. The bigger the harem, the bigger the male needs to be to defend it.
But we have to ask the why. I mean, evolution is efficient. It doesn't waste energy making a male weigh 4 tons just for aesthetics. Blubber is expensive to maintain. Why does nature do this? Why make the male so gigantic just because he has more girlfriends?
It comes down to what the text calls the mechanism of male bullying. We have to look at the math of the harem. If one male seal monopolizes 50 females,
That means 49 other males have 0 females?
precisely, it is a zero-sum game. If one guy takes it all, the others die genetic deaths. They leave no offspring. Their entire lineage just ends with them.
So it's literally life or death for their genetic line.
It's the ultimate winner-take-all tournament. And
Right.
because the stakes are so high, total genetic extinction for the losers, the fighting is just unbelievably brutal.
What happens?
Male elephant seals will rear up and slam their 8,000-pound chests together. They have these thick hides on their necks to absorb bites. They try to crush each other. The beach isn't a romantic getaway, it's a gladiator arena. The biggest, strongest, heaviest males are the only ones who can hold the beach and win those fights.
So the smaller males, even if they're still thousands of pounds, they just get beaten up, pushed into the sea, and never get to breed.
They never even get close. And the giant males who do win, they pass on their giant genes to their sons.
So over thousands of generations of this bloody tournament, you end up with a male that is 9 times the size of the female.
It's a biological arms race, fueled by the winner-take-all nature of polygyny. The moment you stop being the biggest, you lose everything.
So the takeaway from the animal kingdom is crystal clear. The bigger the males, the bigger the harems. The size isn't just about diet, it's a record of historical violence.
And that is the rule. That's the foundation.
Okay, so now we have to turn that lens on ourselves. This is the part where it gets a little uncomfortable. Where do Homo sapiens fall on this biological graph? Are we gibbons or are we elephant seals?
Well, the source provides the hard data. When you look at humans on average across all populations, males are about 8% taller.
8% taller.
And 15% heavier than females.
15% heavier.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not exactly the same like the monogamous gibbons, but we certainly aren't double the weight like gorillas, and definitely not 9 times the weight like the seals.
Right. We are in this interesting, ambiguous middle ground. We're not at either extreme.
So what's the verdict?
The text says that if an alien biologist came down to Earth and just looked at our measurements, ignoring our laws, our poetry, our wedding ceremonies, just looking at the meat and bone, they would have a very specific conclusion.
Which is?
They would conclude that humans are mostly monogamous, but mildly polygynous.
Mostly monogamous, but mildly polygynous.
Yeah.
It sounds like a contradiction. It sounds like someone saying, I'm mostly a vegetarian, but I eat steak on Tuesdays.
It essentially means we are biologically confused. We aren't designed for total rampant promiscuity. We just don't have the size for it.
Right.
If we were truly polygynous like the gorilla, the average man would be 7 feet tall and weigh 400 pounds, while the average woman would be 4 feet tall. That's not us. But we aren't perfectly designed for total fidelity either. That 15% gap is a marker. It tells a story.
It tells the story of a history where some men historically had more than one mate.
Exactly. Not to the extreme of the gorilla, but enough to leave a mark.
So that 15% size difference is basically the physical scar of our ancestors fighting for mates.
In a way, yes. It suggests a history of mild but consistent competition. It means that for millions of years, bigger men had slightly more reproductive success than smaller men. Not total dominance like the elephant seal, but just enough of an edge to skew the species over time.
Wow. Okay. But the source doesn't just stop at size. It looks at our behavior to back this up.
Right. Specifically, it looks at childhood to see if this programming shows up early.
Yes, the rough and tumble play section. This was really interesting because I think every parent has noticed this dynamic on the playground, but maybe hasn't connected it to mating strategies.
It is a very, very consistent pattern in mammals. The source notes that in polygynous species, where males have to eventually fight for harems, the young males engage in rough play.
They wrestle.
They wrestle, they pin each other, they bite, but not to kill. They're practicing.
They're running simulations.
It's a boot camp for the real dominance bouts they'll face as adults. If they don't learn how to grapple and gauge their strength and test their limits when they're young, they won't stand a chance of winning a harem later.
And what about the monogamous animals? The gibbons.
Monogamous males, like the California Mass text cites, don't really wrestle much. The text jokingly says they are too upstanding for such nonsense. But biologically, they don't do it because they don't need to. They don't have to fight to the death for a mate. If everyone gets a partner, why risk getting injured in a practice match? Spending precious calories on wrestling is a waste of energy for a monogamous species.
It's a bad investment.
A very bad investment.
So looking at human kids, what's the verdict?
Well, the author shares this very relatable anecdote about their own kindergarten experience during nap time.
I can already guess.
The girls pretended to nap. The boys immediately turned the mats into a wrestling ring.
Classic. I think we've all seen that exact scene play out.
And the hard data backs it up. The source states that human boys start wrestling and roughhousing around age 3.
And it gets more intense.
By age 4, boys hit, push, and trip behaviors that they themselves define as just playing 5 times more often than girls.
5 times more often. That is a statistically huge difference. You usually look for percentage points in science. This is a multiple.
It is. It's a profound behavioral split that emerges very early, and the text makes an important distinction. The only female mammals that really roughhouse are carnivores, like lionesses or wolves.
Why them?
Because they need to practice for hunting. It's a different skill set. In almost all other mammals, this vigorous, non-lethal wrestling is the exclusive domain of polygynous males.
So when you see little boys tackling each other in the park, you're not just seeing boys being boys. or bad behavior.
You're watching ancient evolutionary programming kick in.
They are preparing for a competition that, historically, determined whether or not they would pass on their genes.
That is the implication. It's behavior rooted in that mildly polygynous history. We are wired to practice for a fight, even if we live in a civilized society where we mostly don't have to physically fight for mates anymore.
Now, this connects directly to another biological marker the text discusses.
Yeah.
Puberty, or specifically the puberty gap.
This is one of those things we all know and take for granted, that girls mature faster than boys. But biologically, it's a massive clue. It's called sexual bimaturism.
Right. And the text claims that late sexual maturity in males is a sign of a history of dueling. Walk us through the logic there.
Think about the economics of the body, the allocation of resources. If you are a male in a species where you have to fight to win a mate, you cannot enter the dating market when you're small and weak.
We'll get destroyed.
You will get crushed by the older, bigger, more experienced males. You might even get killed. It's a terrible strategy to show up to the tournament before you're ready.
So it pays to wait, to stay on the sidelines and grow.
Exactly. You need extra time to grow the weapons. The text lists things like a peacock's plumage, a deer's antlers, a lion's mane, or just raw muscle mass. A male needs to bulk up before he even thinks about stepping into the ring.
So evolution builds in a delay.
It delays his sexual maturity to give him that crucial growth window. It diverts energy away from reproduction and channels it all into growth.
The examples from the animal kingdom are pretty stark here, too.
They are. Let's go back to the northern elephant seal. The females reach sexual maturity at age 3. At 3 years old, they're ready to be moms.
And the males.
Males, not until age 8.
That is a 5-year gap.
5 extra years of just eating, growing, and surviving, all to have a chance at competing. If a male seal tried to mate at age 3, he'd be laughed off the beach or, more likely, crushed to death by an 8,000-pound rival.
The satin bowerbird is another one.
Yes, the females mature in half the time it takes the males, who takes 7 years.
Because the males have to spend all that time building those incredibly elaborate bowers and collecting blue things to look perfect, or they get absolutely nothing.
It's all about preparing for the competition. Now, look at humans.
Okay.
Boys reach puberty on average 2 years after girls.
2 years. It's not the 5 years of the seal, but it's a significant, undeniable delay.
And our growth spurt pattern perfectly mimics those other non-monogamous primates. The text argues that this biological delay speaks directly to an evolutionary history where some males fought for extra mates, while others got none.
So if we were perfectly monogamous, like the gibbons, boys and girls would mature at the same time.
It's very likely yes. In perfectly monogamous species, the life stages tend to align because both sexes enter the market at the same time. There's no biological advantage to waiting. The delay is the fighting time. It's practice time.
The source had a really funny and kind of cringy image about this, the awkwardness of the middle school dance.
Right. Picture it. An 11-year-old boy dancing with an 11-year-old girl.
I'm picturing it.
His face is probably at her breast height. She is biologically stepping into womanhood. Her hips are widening, her breasts are developing. She is biologically starting to look like a woman.
And him?
He's still a child, biologically speaking. He's waiting for his big testosterone surge. He's smaller, his voice hasn't dropped, he's all elbows.
It's so socially awkward, but it makes perfect sense to an evolutionary biologist.
Perfectly. Nature's holding him back, essentially saying, "Not yet, kid. You need more muscle before you can even think about impressing her."
Wow. Okay, so we've got a consistent narrative here. We have the size differences, we have the behavior differences in play, and now we have these developmental differences in puberty. All three point toward the same conclusion.
I'm mildly polygynous, pass.
But then the text throws a massive curveball. We have to talk about how we look, the ornaments, because this complicates the picture significantly.
This is where it gets really, really interesting. The drab versus fab principle.
I love that phrasing. The faithful sex looks drab, and the slutty sex looks fab.
It's a memorable heuristic, isn't it? The scientific principle behind it is that promiscuity drives sexual dimorphism in appearance. The sex that competes for mates, the one that's trying to attract as many partners as possible, usually evolves these extravagant, showy traits. They become fab.
Like the peacock's tail. That's the classic textbook example.
It is. The peacock has this iridescent, massive tail that makes it hard to fly and makes it a giant, shimmering target for tigers. From a pure survival standpoint, it's a terrible idea.
But from a mating standpoint,
It's genius because the peahen loves it. It's an advertisement. It screams, "Look at me. I am so healthy. I am so strong. I have such good genes that I can survive despite this ridiculous heavy tail. Pick me."
And the peon, the female?
She's brown, she's cray, she blends right into the bushes, she's drab. She doesn't need to advertise because all the males are already chasing her. She holds all the power of choice.
So in a highly polygynous system, the competing sex gets flashy and the choosing sex stays practical.
Precisely. And in perfectly monogamous species,
They should look the same.
like the swans or the gibbons, the sexes look nearly identical. Neither one needs to be a giant advertisement because they pair off one-to-one. There's no intense market competition that requires that kind of display. A male swan doesn't need a gold chain and a flashy car. He just needs a female swan.
Okay, so the author proposes another thought experiment. You're that alien biologist again. You land on Earth, you look at humans. What are our ornaments?
Well, looking at the male, you see some clear ones. You see facial hair beards are a classic secondary sexual characteristic. You see broad shoulders. And as the text very bluntly points out, humans have oversized penises compared to other great apes.
Okay, so males have ornaments. That tracks with the polygyny theory so far. Males compete, so they get the flashy bits.
Well, wait, now look at the female. And this is where humans are really, really unique among primates.
How so?
Human females have permanently enlarged breasts. In all other primates, breasts only swell during lactation to feed a baby. In humans, they are permanent ornaments. They are there even when a woman is not nursing.
And it's not just breasts.
No. Females also have exaggerated waist-to-hip ratios, fuller lips, higher-pitched voices. These are all display traits.
So wait a minute. The male has ornaments, and the female has ornaments.
Exactly. Both sexes are fab.
What on earth does that mean for our slut scale?
It completely complicates it. It implies that both sexes had to compete for mates.
Interesting. So it wasn't just males fighting over passive females like the elephant seals. Females were competing for males, too.
Yes. And it implies that both sexes had the power of choice, as the text puts it. Looks like somebody in our ancestral past was getting a little nookie on the side.
For both sides.
For both sides. If females were purely passive prizes, to be won-like in the gorilla harem, they wouldn't need ornaments. Why would a female gorilla need to look sexy if the silverback is just going to claim her anyway, regardless of how she looks?
Right. It's a waste of energy.
The fact that human women evolved specific physical traits to be attractive suggests that men were being picky too. There was mutual selection going on.
That makes the human dating game sound a lot more egalitarian and a lot more complicated than the gorilla game.
It does. It suggests a complex dance where everyone is trying to attract the best possible partner they can get. We are a mutual courtship species. We are both showing off for each other.
But the source goes deeper than just beards and breasts. It says those are just secondary characteristics. We need to talk about the primary fitness indicator, the thing that really matters for humans.
This is probably the most crucial part of the whole analysis. Secondary characteristics are nice, but what is the main thing humans look for? What is the human equivalent of the peacock's tail?
The source says it's the brain.
The brain, our intelligence. In our species, brain power counts for much, much more on the reproductive front than sheer size or strength. We are the smart ape.
And this is where the drab versus fad rule gets really interesting again. Because who has the big brain? Men or women?
Both of them. That is the key. Unlike the peacock's tail, which is attached exclusively to the male, human intelligence is not tethered to one sex.
So we're equally smart.
The remarkable cognitive similarities between men and women suggest that hominid males and females bred each other for intelligence roughly equally.
Women wanted smart men, and men wanted smart women.
And that created a feedback loop of intelligence, a runaway selection for brains.
Explain that.
If one sex didn't care about intelligence, if men only cared about hips, for example, and not conversation, then women wouldn't have evolved such a large, energetically expensive brain.
Right. That thing is a fuel hog.
The brain burns 20% of our daily calories. You don't evolve an organ that expensive unless it gives you a massive advantage, either in survival or in mating. The fact that we both have it proves we both valued it in a partner. We literally bred each other to be witty, to be problem solvers, to be creative, to be good conversationalists.
However, the source does point out some specific cognitive differences. It calls them the hunter versus gatherer legacy.
Yes, and we have to be really careful here. The text is clear. These are statistical nuances and averages, not differences in overall intelligence or ability.
Not absolutes.
Not at all. But the text links these average differences to ancestral roles.
Let's break those down. What are women, on average, better at, according to the text?
Women tend to be better at object location memory, keeping track of things in space. Verbal fluency is another one.
Like remembering where I put my keys when I've lost them.
Effectively, yes. The evolutionary route is thought to be gathering. Imagine you are on the savannah 50,000 years ago. If you're gathering plants for survival, you need to remember where the edible berries are, where the good roots are, and which patch of forest is ripe this season.
You need a mental map of resources.
You need to remember that specific rock formation and what grows under it. You also need to keep track of toddlers who are constantly wandering off. It requires a diffuse awareness, a form of multitasking.
Okay, that makes sense. And men.
Men, on average, tend to be better at mental rotation of shapes and targeting. Navigational skills.
And the theory is that this comes from hunting.
That's the theory. You chase game past a hill, around a bend in the river, deeper into the forest. Then, after the kill, you have to turn around and find your way back home. You need to mentally rotate the map of the landscape to navigate. You need that tunnel vision on the prey.
So men have focus and navigation, women have multitasking and object location.
That is the broad generalization the text makes, and it amusingly applies this to modern courtship.
Oh, right, the flirting style section.
It says women tend to juggle many balls at once in a social context. They're processing the conversation, the body language, the social hierarchy, the safety of the environment, all simultaneously.
And men.
Men tend to not beat around the bush. They focus on the target, the objective.
I think anyone who has been on a date can probably relate to that dynamic. The guy is often focused on the objective, get the girl, and the girl is analyzing the social context, the long-term potential, his tone of voice all at once.
It connects our modern social behavior all the way back to those fundamental survival needs on the savannah. It's not Mars and Venus, it's hunter and gatherer.
So let's stop and look at the profile we've built of the human animal so far. We are 15% bigger if we are male. We mature later, we both have ornaments, we both have big brains.
Laying it all out on the graph, it really confirms that initial classification. Less monogamous than gibbons, but far, far more monogamous than chimps, gorillas, or orangutans. We are a unique hybrid.
But now we have to talk about culture. Because humans aren't just biological machines. We build societies. We have laws. We have religion. Does our recorded history match our biology?
This is where Section 6 of our deep dive gets really profound. We have to look at the ethnographic survey data.
The numbers here were genuinely surprising to me. The source cites a massive survey of 849 distinct human societies across history, a huge data set.
And here's the breakdown. Only 16% of those societies were strictly culturally monogamous.
Only 16%. That completely contradicts what I feel is the modern Western norm. I would have guessed 90%.
Exactly. And the other side, 83.5% were polygynous, meaning they culturally allowed men to have multiple wives.
83.5%.
And just for the record, less than 0.5% were polyandrous, where women have multiple husbands. So it's a massive skew.
That sounds like we're more than mildly polygynous. That sounds
Oh.
like we are very polygynous, culturally speaking.
It does sound that way on the surface,
Hmm.
but there is a massive catch. It's called the economic reality.
Right. Just because the law says you can have 5 wives doesn't mean you can afford 5 wives.
Precisely. The text points out that even in these officially polygynous cultures, the vast majority of actual marriages, somewhere between 60% and 70%, are monogamous.
Why is that?
2 simple reasons: math and resources. First, the human sex ratio is roughly 50-50. There aren't enough females for every man to have 2. For one man to have 2 wives, another man must have none. It's a mathematical impossibility for everyone to be polygynous.
It's a zero-sum game again.
And second, supporting a family is expensive. Supporting multiple families is astronomically expensive.
So who gets the extra wives?
The wealthy, the powerful, the chiefs, the kings, the landlords. The text says in 5 out of 6 modern societies, wealthy men monopolize most of the wives, and low-status men often die bachelors.
There is that bullying dynamic again. The winners take the resources and therefore take the mates.
It mirrors the elephant seal, just with money, land, and cattle instead of blubber and teeth. The source calls it a polygyny threshold. You have to cross a certain wealth and status threshold to even unlock the polygynous option in the game of life.
The text also brings up history and religion. We tend to think of Western religion, Judeo-Christianity, as the bedrock of monogamy, but that's not the whole story.
Not at all. The source reminds us that polygyny was common in Judaism and early Christianity right up until the Middle Ages. The Old Testament is just full of it.
King Solomon.
King Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. David had many wives. Abraham, Jacob. The patriarchs of the faith were all polygynous.
It's hard to keep the genealogy straight, as the author puts it.
And it's not just ancient history, even in American history. The text references the founding fathers. It's an uncomfortable truth, but many of them had long-term relationships with slaves that functionally operated as a form of polygyny. They had a legal wife, and then they had other women with whom they had children.
And of course, the text mentions Mormon history.
Right. And the author has a very funny line about being ready to convert to Mormonism until he learned that the man had to financially support all the wives and all their children.
It's not the sexual paradise people imagine.
He realized it's not a sexual paradise, it's a massive sacrifice of resources. You have to buy multiple houses, multiple cars, put multiple sets of kids through college. It's a huge economic burden.
It's not just a free-for-all. It's an investment strategy for the man and a survival strategy for the women.
Which brings us to a really interesting, kind of hopeful idea in the text. The residual leftovers theory.
This is a nice thought. I like this part.
It is the idea that perhaps our polygynous traits, the aggression, the muscles, the urge for variety, are just evolutionary leftovers, like our appendix.
Something we used to need on the savannah, but don't really need in a modern city.
Exactly. The author speculates. Are men shrinking evolutionarily? Is muscle fiber slowly being replaced by moral fiber as a desirable trait? As we become more civilized, do we need less bully in us? Are we slowly moving toward the Gibbon end of the spectrum?
That's a really nice thought, that we're actively evolving toward that true equal partnership model.
But then the text points to modern power dynamics, which kind of rains on that parade.
Right.
It argues that powerful men, the modern inheritors of those ancient ambition genes, are still historically promiscuous.
The list of names cited was eclectic.
Mm.
Donald Trump, Babe Ruth, Henry Kissinger.
The point being, none of them are exactly Calvin Klein models. They aren't getting mates because of their physical ornaments or their abs.
True. That's a fair point.
But what they possess is status and power, and the text notes they are all notorious for womanizing. It seems that when modern men acquire immense power, that ancient polygynous software kicks back in.
And the contrast.
Powerful women. The source lists Martha Stewart, Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi. These are women who reach the absolute pinnacle of power in their fields, but they do not display the same level of what the author calls manizing.
So the drive for multiple partners seems to track with male power much more strongly than with female power, even when the women have the resources and opportunity.
Which brings us back, full circle, to the biological bottom line. The source calls us, provocatively, the descendants of bastards.
Ouch. That's harsh.
It is. It's a provocative way to say that despite our cultural ideal of long-term pair bonding, our species has a long and successful history of double diddling. We are here today because some of our ancestors were aggressive, ambitious, and successful at acquiring multiple mates. The nice, non-competitive guys. Many of them didn't become our ancestors.
They died celibate, like the small elephant seals that get pushed off the beach.
Exactly. We are the successful offspring of the winners of that long, slow tournament.
And this leads to the specialization of the sexes. How does the text break down the fundamental biological goals of men versus women?
It asks you to look at a cloud of humans not as a sociologist, but as a biologist.
What do you see?
You see that male bodies specialize in mating.
High sexual activity, competition.
Their goal, biologically, is to impregnate many. The parental investment per child is literally just sperm, but the potential for quantity is enormous. A man can theoretically father hundreds, even thousands of children in a lifetime.
Damn women.
Female bodies specialize in parenting. The parental investment is incredibly high. 9 months of gestation, a dangerous childbirth, years of nursing and care. Their goal is to select the best possible genes because they can only produce a very limited number of offspring in a lifetime.
So it's quality over quantity for women and quantity over quality for men, biologically speaking.
That's the fundamental biological tension. And this leads to a fascinating and maybe controversial conclusion about fatherhood.
The idea that fatherhood is an imitation.
The source argues that motherhood is ancient. It is primal mammal behavior. Mothers have nursed and protected their young for 200 million years. It's deeply ingrained.
But fatherhood?
Fatherhood is a relatively recent invention. It's a male imitation of the female nurturing instinct.
It ain't easy getting a sperm maker to behave like a parent.
That is the direct quote. Males in most mammal species, 95% of them, couldn't care less about their offspring. They mate and they leave. So human fatherhood is this unique evolutionary development where the male has been tamed or bred to adopt these female-like nurturing behaviors.
We domesticated ourselves,
Hmm.
or rather, women domesticated men.
In a way, yes. Which brings us right to the end of the text and the final thought it leaves us with.
The 15% rule.
Let's recap that for you listening.
Humans are mostly monogamous. We form pair bonds, we fall in love, we raise families together. But we have this 15% margin, a margin that's visible in our height, our weight, and our history of polygyny.
We are 85% given, 15% elephant seal.
That is a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
And that 15% explains the cheating, the jealousy, the competition, the high divorce rates, and the confusing, often contradictory nature of modern dating.
And just as we think we have the answer, the text leaves us with a giant cliffhanger.
It does. It poses the final question. How did female hominids manage to breed males to be fatherly? If men are biologically wired for competition for wombs, how did we ever get them to stay home and change diapers?
What's the answer?
The author says, for sensitive male attachment, we have to thank the mystery of menstruation.
The mystery of menstruation. That is a tease if I ever heard one. What does that mean?
It suggests that something about the concealed nature of the female ovulatory cycle forced a massive change in male behavior. If a male doesn't know when a female is fertile,
He can't just show up for a few days, mate, and leave.
he has to stay around all the time to guard his investment and ensure he's the father of her next child. He can't just hit and run.
That is a brilliant evolutionary hack. Concealed ovulation as a tool for enforcing pair bonding. But the text leaves the full details for the next chapter.
It does. So here's the takeaway for you listening. The next time you are in a coffee shop or at a party or just walking down the street, look at the people around you. Don't just see people, see the biology.
Spot the ornaments. Look at the height differences between couples. Watch the behavior of the little boys and girls playing in the park.
See the ancient evolutionary clues that tell the story of how we all got here. We are carrying millions of years of history in our genes, and sometimes understanding that biological baggage is the key to understanding ourselves.
And maybe it helps us be a little more forgiving of our contradictions. We are all trying to balance an ancient drive for competition with a modern desire for connection.
85% lover, 15% fighter.
Something like that.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
We will catch you on the next one.